Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the next webinar in the Esavvy webinar series. This one is entitled Top 5+1 Tips of How to Maximize the ROI of a CRM Investment. Just to do some introductions. My name is David Goad. I'm the Managing Director of Esavvy. Just a little bit of background about myself. I've been in IT, or I've been in the industry about 25 years, and in IT the last 15 years. The last 4 years I spent managing Esavvy. Prior to that, I was actually 6 years with Microsoft selling and delivering Dynamics CRM. I was the regional sales director for Microsoft for 2 years, and I was their Microsoft Consulting Services practice lead for 4 years. Prior to that, I worked for KPMG Consulting, running their CRM practice in Australia and then also in the US. And the rest of my experience is working in industry, working in customer service and in operational roles. And I've worked with a number of different software packages, not just Dynamics, but also Siebel, SAP, Oracle, and PeopleSoft. So my experience is relatively broad-based. Okay. So who is Esavvy? Well, first of all, Esavvy is a specialist in Microsoft Dynamics CRM. We are a Microsoft Certified Gold Partner, one of about 4 or 5 in Australia. We've been recognized for our expertise. We recently won Worldwide Cloud Partner of the Year for Microsoft. We were also CRM Partner of the Year last year and CRM Partner of the Year previously. We've also a member of what they refer to as Inner Circle, which means we're the top 20 or 30 of Microsoft CRM partners globally. We've got experience in more than 200 deployments of Dynamics CRM. Some of our customer list includes, but is not limited to Australian Broadcasting Corporation, Boral, Accor Hotels, Jet Set Travel, Garmin, Sony, and many other well-recognized brands and companies. We perceive ourselves to be leaders in the CRM deployment methodology known as SureStep. We teach other partners in its use. Several of the principals in Esavvy had a hand in the development of the SureStep methodology. And satisfied customers is our goal. As part of our Microsoft Gold certification, Microsoft requires us to go out and independently survey our customers every year. The last 2 surveys in a row, 100% of our customers who were surveyed said that they were satisfied with our service, that they were likely to recommend, that they were likely to repurchase from us again. So on to the main agenda for today. So my idea here is to talk about the top 5+1 tips of how to maximize the return on investment of your CRM project. This could also equally apply to ERP projects as well. My background is both in ERP and CRM. The 5 main points I want to cover off today are around planning, setting good objectives and targets around your business application deployment, the use of project management methodology, change management, talking about business cases, and the last topic or the bonus topic is around maximizing the ROI by selecting the right CRM product in the first place. So let's just set the scene a little bit. There is a study that has been done by Forrester Research called the Forrester Total Economic Impact Study for Dynamics CRM. That particular study indicated that the average return on investment for a Dynamics CRM deployment could be as much as 243%. So that's all great, right? Party on, we're all excited that we can get that kind of benefit. I would have to say to you, though, that through practical experience, I've seen a number of different customers and other people in the industry who have not necessarily gotten what they bargained for when they deployed a CRM system. Some of my customers have gotten well more than the 200% ROI, and some have got less. And there's been a few sort of common factors that I've seen throughout their deployments which have contributed to maximizing investment in CRM, Dynamics CRM, or any CRM or ERP product for that matter. So tip number 1, develop a plan. You should have a plan in terms of how you're going to select your CRM solution. You should also have a plan in terms of how you're going to deploy it. You would be surprised the number of customers I talk to when they come to me and they say that they have a problem, they need a solution, but they have no view in their head in terms of how they're going to go about finding the solution, and they have no view in their head about how they're actually going to deploy it. So I think if you just ask and answer a few sort of key questions about your CRM selection and about your CRM deployment, you will be a long way along in terms of being able to have a proper process to maximize your return on investment. So in terms of your plan for the software selection, I think if you just can go through and ask and answer some of these sort of core key questions about how you're going to select the software, then you'll be further ahead than a lot of other customers and prospects that I've seen. The first one is, what's going to be the software selection process? Are you going to do some sort of tender process? Is it going to be a demo off? Are you going to ask for some sort of proof of concept? Each of these processes have their strengths and weaknesses and their benefits and their negatives, but you need to have a think about how you're going to do that. Who needs to be involved in the process? Who's going to be your subject matter experts from the business side of things, and who knows, who's going to have a good idea of the requirements and what you're going to need the system to do, and will they be able to participate? Who's going to write the business case? As I'm going to talk about a little bit later on in this process, having a good, well-formatted business case around your CRM deployment is absolutely key to having successful deployment and maximizing your return on investment. So who's going to write that business case? What's it going to look like? What the information is going to be based on? If you've got a good business case and you know what kind of benefits you want to drive from the system, then from that you can drive some good functionality requirements. So who's going to write those? How are you going to write them? How are you going to develop that information? Once you've got all the requirements that you can then compare against all the solutions that you're looking at, the question is going to become, how are you going to do that comparison? You're going to do some sort of analytical analysis. It's going to be numerical. It's going to be some sort of focus group that are basically going to review it and sort of apply some sort of, thumbs up, thumb down type of approach. What are you going to do? And the last, but not least, the most important thing is who needs to approve this process and how are you going to involve them throughout the software selection process. Other things you should plan or think about before you do your CRM or business application deployment. Again, who's going to be involved? How many phases? There's a basic tenet in project management that says there's a trade-off between cost versus time versus scope. One of the ways that people tend to try and de-risk projects is to have a number of phases, which is great, but of course the more phases you have in the project, the more cost will be associated in more time, but you will reduce risk. So you need to have some sort of view going into your project, how are you going to phase it or whether you will phase it. Other things to consider are which department will go first, which department will go last. One of the things you really seriously need to consider is what kind of tasks can you do internally, what are you expecting a systems integrator or a third-party consultancy to do, and how are you going to do the business process analysis, the user acceptance testing, who's going to do the training. These are all things that you need to have a think about up front before you get into your deployment. Obviously, you want to take guidance from your systems integrator because they're experts in this and they've done this a number of times before. But it's always good to have a view about this before you go into the deployment, just with a view of thinking about how you're going to maximize your return on investment. Tip number 2, I would suggest to you that if you want to have a successful deployment and you want to maximize your return on investment, you need to set good, smart objectives and targets for your business application based on real business value. These objectives, they talk about smart objectives, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time frame based. A little tool that I tend to use with my customers is something referred to as conditions of satisfaction. The idea here is that you would sit down with your business sponsor, you'd have a conversation with them, and you'd say, look at what are the 3 or 4, maybe 5 key things that you want to achieve out of this deploying the solution. You want to keep it high level. You want to talk about the what as well as the how. And you want to, and these 4 or 5 bullet points essentially become your kind of guiding principles throughout the project. You can document these down. You can put them on your status reports. You can review them when you're actually developing your functional specifications. It's pretty key because one of the things I've noticed in a lot of CRM and ERP deployments is that oftentimes the project sponsor comes along and they have a vision about where they want things to go. But then what happens is once it gets put into the hands of their more juniors or the functional people or the subject matter experts, they can really go off on a tangent in terms of the kind of functionality or capabilities that they want to look for in a system. And if you're not focusing on your sort of core business objectives, then you can actually get CRM or ERP projects that can go off on a real tangent. And at the end of the day, you're not going to get that return on investment. You're not going to get those benefits that you were looking for at the beginning of the cycle. My third tip for everyone is to do something, use a proven project management methodology. Clearly, if you're using a standard methodology, this is basic sort of, in one of my previous lives, I used to be a quality assurance manager, just like ISO or any kind of other kind of quality process. If you use repeatable processes, then you're more highly likely to get a repeatable result. In the case of Dynamics CRM, Microsoft would recommend a solution called Microsoft SureStep, which I'll talk about in a minute. There's a statistic that 69% of respondents who use a project management methodology consistently report a much lower project failure rate than those who don't. This might seem obvious, but a lot of people will go into CRM or ERP projects and I'll find that they actually won't have a methodology or they're not quite sure about the process that they're going to go through. Okay, so as I said to you, the methodology that we use for Dynamics CRM is a solution called SureStep. This is a methodology that was developed by Microsoft specifically for Dynamics CRM. It's both a CRM selection methodology but also a deployment methodology as well. Microsoft have invested more than $1 million per year developing this methodology out, building out the tools around it. It is based on recognizable standards, the PMBOK standards, Project Management Institute. It's in its 5th release. It's designed to scale to any kind of implementation, either small implementations or large implementations. The team at Esavvy was involved in the development of it by virtue of the fact that several of us are ex-Microsoft consulting services. And the SureStep methodology supports multiple implementation approaches. If you look at the quote on the bottom, you'll see that an independent research firm, Nucleus Research, basically suggested that based on their studies, if you use a methodology, in this case SureStep for Dynamics CRM, that the probability of having a low-risk deployment and higher ROI increases significantly. And this methodology is actually free and available for both customers, Dynamics customers, and partners to use. There's the link there that I've provided on the screen. And of course, you can get this separately from us if you have any questions. Tip number 4, increase the adaptability and usability of the new system with effective change management strategies. So this is something here I refer to as the change management cycle. I'll begin this section by talking about a little story that I have about a customer that we once had. Esavvy were brought in to help out a customer who had previously deployed CRM, and they were having a lot of challenges. It was for a Salesforce automation deployment of about 800 users. They were very frustrated the system wasn't getting used. And when we came in, we took a look at it. What we quickly realized was that they had a very complex system that they configured. It took over 15 screens simply to put an opportunity into the system. This had nothing to do, and the users who were actually using the system had relatively little training on how to navigate around it. This was nothing to do with the technology. The technology was fine and would do whatever the customer was looking for. This is basic business process engineering and very poor change management. So I think that when you're putting in a new business system, you need to consider the change management cycle. You need to consider your business process engineering around the tool and make sure that you've included those in your project plans. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to get the benefits out of the system because people won't end up using it. In terms of the change management cycles, there's sort of key things that you want to consider. Obviously, you need to prepare people through informing them about what's going to happen and how the new system is going to work. You need to tell them what they need to know in terms of giving them good business processes, understanding what their impact is going to be on their job function, giving them guidance around how they're going to change. Their job may change with the new business system. You obviously are going to need to show them what to do in terms of doing training classes, providing guides, and you want to give them an opportunity to use the system themselves and learn at their own pace, and you want to give them some tools that once they actually are up and running on the system, they can come back and ask questions and they can get help. These are all key components of the change management cycle, and change management is very critical in terms of achieving a good ROI on a project. Tip number 5 around maximizing your return on investment for Dynamics CRM. This particular tip is around having a business case. You would be surprised the number of customers that I talk to who actually don't have a business case before they start their journey and have not revised their business case. Now, when I say business case, I don't necessarily mean the project approval forms or the paperwork that you need to do from a company perspective in order to get approvals. What I'm referring to is actually understanding the benefits that you're trying to get out of the system and what kind of numbers and kind of demonstrable benefits that you want to get that have that system perform. Oftentimes when people build a business case, it gets built at the beginning of the process, as you have here in this diagram, and then it gets left. It sits on a shelf and it never gets looked at. What I would suggest to you is that the more appropriate use of a business case is not necessarily in the writing of it, but in the frequent review and reviewing back on that business case to making sure, circling back to making sure that the project is going to achieve the business case you set out to achieve, the benefits that you set out to achieve. So I would recommend that periodically through both the software selection process and also through the actual delivery, you should be going back to that business case. For example, if you were going to go through a process that had an RFT that's going to be issued with a series of requirements, you'd want to check those requirements back against the business case to, again, make sure that you're going to achieve the benefits that you're going to look for. Any functionality, any requirements that were not directly related to that business case should, in my opinion, be jettisoned or deprioritized. When you're going through the demo and you're looking at the various solutions that the actual various vendors are presenting to you, you again want to review those solutions back against that business case to see if they're actually going to achieve the benefits that you're looking for. Once you've selected a system and you've actually gone into the design phase, again, you want to make sure that any functionality or capabilities that get included in the design, again, are going to achieve that business case. And at the end of the whole process, once you've gone live, you want to go back, you want to review the benefits that you actually gained against that business case. If you haven't attained the benefits that you were expecting to attain, then why not? Should you look at a phase 2 or additional implementation phases to get those benefits out? Should you revise your business case development process and maybe look at making changes so that the next time you actually develop a business case for one of your solutions in the business, that's going to be a little bit more effective. So those were my sort of 5 ideas around trying to maximize your ROI around a CRM or ERP project. The bonus tip is actually another series of ideas specifically around selecting the right CRM product or the right ERP product in the first place. Obviously, if you select the right product, then you have a better chance of actually maximizing your ROI or return on investment. And here I have a couple of suggestions to you in terms of how to improve your software selection process. Or what I would say is a number of common mistakes that I see customers fall into when they're going through their software selection process. And remember, I've been on this from both ends of the spectrum. I've been on the end of the person actually picking the new system, and I've been on the end of the person actually selling into that customer or positioning that new system. So some of the mistakes that people commonly make in a software selection process. The first one is too much focus on functional fit. So I have a question here, and the question is a little bit of a quiz. What's the ideal degree of fit when evaluating a business application? For those of you who don't understand what degree of fit is, that's usually a term that says if you have 100 business requirements, what degree will the solution achieve, either configuration or out of the box? Some people would think that probably then 50, 75, or maybe even 90% might be good degrees of fit. Obviously, the more functionality you get out of the box, the better, correct? Well, that's actually not actually the case. The picture here of this gentleman is a guy by the name of Vilfredo Pareto. For those of you who don't know Pareto's rule, 20% of the work, or 80% of the work comes from 20% of the requirements. It's a very common concept in math and also in business. My point here is that it's not about what degree of fit, in other words, how much the solution meets what you need out of the box. It's what's the cost going to be associated with getting that extra set of requirements. So if you had an 80% degree of fit, right, what's the cost going to be associated with getting those additional 20% of requirements? You might find some applications where that additional 20% or getting that 100% fit is relatively inexpensive, and in other cases it may be very expensive. So again, it doesn't matter about how many requirements your solution meets out of the box. It's about what's going to cost to actually get you 100% of the way there. Common mistake number 2 in terms of selecting software tools. Cost estimates based on limited information. Estimation in terms of ERP and CRM consulting costs is heavily dependent on the skill and experience of the estimator, as well as their ability to use sort of standard estimation tools. Esavvy have standard estimation tools, as do most other systems integrators. But even the best estimator with the best tools will still produce a poor quality estimate if they lack information. And understanding the client's requirements or they made incorrect assumptions. So incorrect assumptions might be in terms of how you're going to phase the project, what's your preferred project plan, what percentage of work the client's going to do versus what you're going to do, the prioritization of the product around other business activities. So this little graph here on the right kind of illustrates the fact that the more information you provide, the greater degree of accuracy you will get out of those services estimates. A lot of customers mistake that, and they will provide a lot of information, but they won't get a good quality result, or they'll end up with a lot of change requests from their systems integrator because they didn't give them the right information and they didn't give them good quality information. And let me make a point here that not necessarily information volume is the best thing either. I came across a RFT that was issued about 4 or 5 weeks ago. The customer had actually written close to 180 pages, but when I sat down with my consultant to actually go through that 180-page document, we realized that 90% of the document was largely useless because it doesn't give us the information we needed to actually quote on the system. So it's not only the quality, the type of information or the quantity, but also the quality. Common mistake number 3 in terms of selecting a CRM software solution is what I refer to as comparing apples and oranges. There are a lot of things, not all vendor proposals that you will get around a software or around services will be the same because they're not based on the same assumptions. Things that will have an impact in terms of a project cost will include number of phases, what plans you have for other people to do the work, what level of documentation you're expecting out of the deployment. These are all things or questions that you should ask about the actual solution. Ask your systems integrator about how they're actually going to go through that process of actually producing. So if you don't consider these things, and you're not actually comparing the 2 proposals together in terms of how the implementation is going to work. Common mistake number 4 that I see customers make in terms of doing a software selection is references, but for what? Oftentimes people will look at the large SI or the small SI or look at the software itself, the software vendor, and they'll ask them for references or in other words proof that they've actually done this particular kind of deployment before. It might be in education, might be in public sector, it might be in general commercial. They'll say, can you give me examples of case studies or references that you've done? Which is great, but oftentimes people will provide references or case studies that are not actually about the actual consultants or people doing the work. It's all well and good to say that that particular software has been used in that particular vertical before, or that that particular systems integrator has done work in that particular vertical before. But if the actual consultants that they're positioning with you have not done work in that space, then a lot of times that IP that you're looking for won't be there. So you should be looking more at the consultants that they are proposing for you to use and not necessarily the consultancy. And you should be looking at the specific references of your software local to your area, not just general references. The next common mistake I see with regards to software selection is what I refer to as a foregone conclusion. There's a concept in psychology called closure. What that basically means is when someone's come up with a decision, they will then seek facts to support that decision, and they'll basically, look at ways of sort of self-justifying why they made the decision in the first place. I don't know. I've seen a lot of software selection processes where people have started from the outset with a particular view, and they were just looking to reaffirm that view, which is all well and good, but you're not going to get the most benefits out of that process, and clearly you're not going to get improve your chances of improving your return on investment if you don't have an open mind and have an open process from the start. The next common mistake I see in terms of software selection is not understanding the business case before you select the software. I like to refer to this as the shiny hubcap syndrome. I've seen this done. I've been as a customer watching a salesperson do this, and I've seen other salespeople do this. Basically, what this refers to is the fact that you go into the actual software selection, you're looking for certain capabilities, and the salesperson is successful in convincing you that you don't really need those capabilities, that there's some other functionality or capabilities in the tool set that are much more interesting or useful. So don't worry about this. Look at this over here. Look at this shiny thing over here. If you actually are a fan of what they call targeted account selling, you would have heard the terms flanking or fragmenting strategy. This basically means where the salesman is actually trying to change your scope or your specification. The warning here is that, again, when you're going through the software selection process and the evaluation process, you should make a point of continuing to reevaluate back against the original business case. Make sure that you don't get sort of confused or befuddled into thinking that certain things are required or that a solution is not necessarily the solution that you started out looking for in the first place. So that's sort of it in terms of the actual topics. So again, my sort of 5 key tips for you in terms of how to maximize your ROI. The first one is, as I said, develop a plan before you start your CRM or your ERP deployment. The second one is set good objectives and targets for your business application deployment. Make sure that they're smart objectives. Make sure that there's consistency of those objectives across different levels in your organization. Use a project management methodology. If you've done it before and you use tools that people have used before, your chances of success are going to increase, and therefore your ROI will increase. Make sure you fold change management into your actual project management and project delivery strategy. You can have the best software in the world, but if you don't have good processes around it and good training and good change management in terms of your people, you're not going to get the return on investment that you're looking for. Revisit the business case frequently. Make sure you revisit that business case throughout the selection and delivery process to make sure that you're going back and trying to get those benefits. And from a software selection process, obviously, if you run a good software selection process, your chances of getting the ROI that you're looking for will increase. So make sure that you have an effective software selection process both for the software and also for the services or systems integrator that's actually going to do the deployment for you. And that was it. And then we're on to the Q&A section. I'm just going to turn on the audio if I can make this work. So I'm going to turn on the audio for everyone. So did anyone have any questions with regards to the presentation? No, everyone followed that. If you have any questions, you can certainly ask them after the presentation. You can ping me an email. My email address is dgoad@esavvy.com.au, or you can send one through to Angelina or Daniel in our marketing team, and they'll forward it through to me. We'll also be posting this presentation up on the web as well for people to be able to watch. Okay, so if there's no other questions, then I'm going to sign off. Oh, there's also a survey. Sorry, I've been reminded there's actually a survey for you to complete. So if you complete that exit survey that will be provided to you, that would be very much appreciated. All right, if there's no other questions, then we'll close off the session. Thank you for your time, and we do appreciate it.